great day, AMP family. I pray that this finds you well. It's a beautiful day in VA. Hope everybody's doing amazing. All right, so welcome back to another edition of AMP for the Kingdom. I hope you're excited. I hope you're ready for this topic for today. If you don't know, if this is your first time tuning in to AMP for the Kingdom, make sure that you understand this is focused on evangelism. This is focused on building relationship with God, bringing people to Christ, and the Great Commission that we've been told to do, found in Matthew 28. All right, so without further ado, before we get started, before we really jump in, take a second, subscribe, because it helps us out. It lets us know that you're following us. Make sure you like the video because it helps out the numbers. On top of that, make sure you watch it to the end because we are trying to get to 400 or 4,000 watch hours on all of our channels. So we want to make sure that you all are sticking with us, you're rocking with us, and last but not least, turn on that notification bell so you know every time there's a new episode of AMP for the Kingdom. All right, so before we get started, before you get into this and we really dive into this deep, go check out our intro and we'll be right back. All right, family, welcome back. All right, so as mentioned before, this is an AMP for the Kingdom session. This one is going to be focused on the tool of your testimony. You might say, your testimony? What does that have to do with evangelizing? Well, I'm going to tell you. But first, now, you may have tuned into the ABCs for evangelism. If you haven't, I'm going to leave a link up there so you can go and check it out. And that's just one of the other tools that we have as an evangelist to bring others to Christ. Now, the testimony is one of the things that is pertinent to every believer. The testimony is something that all of us have, but may not realize the effect that it can have on someone else that may just be starting out in their journey. I have a number of testimonies because God has done a number of great and marvelous and awesome things in my life, and not only in my life, but in my family's life, in my kids' life, and He continues to do stuff in my life even now. As you may see the new decor as we're going forth, you will learn more about that as well. But that is just one of the testimonies that God has done, even just in this time. But you never know what others are going through. And many times God first puts people in our lanes in our lives that we might minister to them. And because we decide to know Him and we decide to follow Him, He sometimes makes it really easy for us to get those wins as evangelists. Other times, it requires a lot of work on our part. And one of the things that you always have, regardless of if somebody's come to you or you've gone in search of someone that God has showed you, you have the testimony. The testimony is a story that has strong significance and a spiritual aspect to what you're doing and what you're going through in life. Many times we can go through some rough times and find ourselves being victorious on the end. We're victorious in Christ. Like, that's one of those things that we tell everybody. We're victorious in Christ. And sometimes people don't always see the victory because they don't understand what they're going through or why they're going through it. And sometimes the reason that you're going through something is the testimony that you're going to bring somebody else or bring to someone else so that they can come out through the same situation. And that was one of the things that for me, and I'm gonna give a short, quick testimony, and it may not be applicable to everybody on here. I have 3 kids, right? But my firstborn, when he was born, there was a pinch of his umbilical cord during birth, right? And it caused a shock to his system. It hit his kidneys, his liver, and there were 2 spots on his brain that they saw during this time. And we found ourselves in Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., around the Howard University area, not far from Howard University. And so we, during this time, this being our first kid, of course, we were very panicky at what was going on, and we didn't necessarily know. But while I was walking around, I was talking to people, getting to know some of the stories of the people that were going through very similar situations as to why they were in Children's National. And one day, one night, I had been laying on the sofa, just kind of watching TV. My son was sleeping, the doctors were keeping watch, and my wife was in the room. I was out in the waiting room area with some of the other parents, and I dozed off. And then it was said to me that this is not for you, this is for somebody else. And I didn't necessarily, at the time, understood what it meant. But as I continued to walk through and talk to the people and pray with some of the families, and God gave me an encouraging word for one family in particular, where I was able to pray with them and then encourage them that what was going on for them was going to be all right. And I stayed in contact with them up until when their child came out of the hospital. Their child had a tumor in their face, so it made it difficult to breathe and so forth because of where the location was, and they had to go through surgery and were worried it was cancerous, the whole nine and so forth. And so in that, I had the opportunity to continue to encourage them. I had the opportunity to pray with them while I was there, and continue to walk the halls and talk to other families and pray with other families and so forth. And for me, while I was there, my son, made a full recovery. It has blown the minds of the doctors. Some of the things that they said that he would have, even growing up, he's 5 now, and there is no signs that he had any trauma when he was 1, or less than 1 rather. So it was just one of those things that it gave me an opportunity to speak and minister to other people because of a testimony. And now I can share that as a testimony. You never know how effective a testimony can be until it is brought to the person that it's intended for. We all go through things. We all go through tests and trials to grow our faith, to make us stronger, to bring us to the realization that God is still God and that He's in control of it all. And sometimes it requires other people testifying to us. But as we go on in evangelism, it is very important that we know the testimonies that we have and the potential power of the testimony, because God has it all planned out. God knows exactly what He's doing, and He knows who's going to come across your way. And so that's why there are certain testimonies that you're like, Lord, I don't understand why I went through this. But then you come across somebody who is going through the same thing, but because you've already succeeded, you've already made it through, that testimony that you share will now be the catalyst for them coming out successful because somebody else did it. So I want to encourage you to keep track of your testimonies. Know what you've learned from them. And if you don't realize that you have a testimony, think about the many things that God has brought you through, has brought you out of. Some has been at work, where God has blessed you with promotions that you didn't know that you deserved. Maybe it was a job that you hated, that God opened the door for you to go to another job. Maybe it was your kid was in the hospital and God brought him out as if nothing ever happened. Maybe it was a car accident that they said you should have died, but you're here walking on the earth. I don't know what your testimony is, but your testimony is one of the most powerful God-given tools that we have to affect change in the lives of people. So make sure that you know your testimonies. Make sure that you know what is pertinent. And when God gives you an opportunity to talk and share the testimonies that He's given you, make sure that you, with strength, with boldness, with the vigor and the love and the passion that God has given you, share the testimony, because you never know whose life you're going to change just by testifying. I know it's important. It's one of those tools that allows you to connect with people differently because you're testifying. It's opening their eyes, one, to you being vulnerable, to you being a true person, not just somebody who's telling people about God. Because sometimes for people that can be for real, but at the same time, it opens their mind to something genuine, to something real that somebody else has gone through. And if they're dealing with it, then they know they can make it through it, that they're not alone in it. And there's always that opportunity that you might connect with them more differently this time than before because you testified. So make sure take the fear out of it. Just testify. Be an open book with what God has done for you and make the difference in the lives around the world. You got this. All right. So that's it for this edition of AMP for the Kingdom. Make sure that you take a second and like the video. Make sure you subscribe so you get everything that's coming from the AMP channel. Make sure that you also take a second, if you haven't already, go and check out the ABCs for evangelism, because I am sure that you will get something out of it. And without further ado, make sure you leave a comment or another topic that you would like us to hit on AMP for the Kingdom, because we are going higher together. Yes, we are about unity and we're about moving forward. All right, so until next time, be inspired, be edified, be encouraged. But God first in all that you do, love unconditionally, do what you love, and always live an AMP life. Let's get amped for the kingdom. Peace.